If I compare Indigenous Australians with Indigenous people in India, I don't know who is at the worst scenario. That I have serious doubt, because I worked with Indigenous people in India, I worked with Indigenous people in Australia. I had colleagues from Indigenous community who worked with me, and I worked with them on a specific project for Indigenous Australian in Australia in a place called Darwin in Northern Territory. So I'm aware of the situation of both Indigenous people in India and Australia. So one thing what you remember, that the level of stigma and discrimination experienced by both groups in India as well as in Australia are equally horrendous. This afternoon there is a news saying that mandatory detention for people who are abusing alcohol in public place. So it sounds like that alcohol use in public place, that is a rowdyism. That's a local newspaper said. The rowdy action could be controlled by mandatory detention for people using alcohol in public place. When you hear that, I'll explain it how that is related with the Indian indigenous population. When you hear that, that sounds normal, that sounds logical, and that sounds justifiable. And who are the people who are caught for using alcohol in public place? That's mostly Indigenous people. And why they use in public place? Maybe I can give an example about it. In Northern Territory, they have a huge public parks. So I used to stay in a place where that my view was towards a public park. And I can see the huge park, maximum 5 people, 10 people any given time, 500, 600 hectare land, and beautifully planned, manicured land, and maybe 5 people and 10 dogs. So this is a standard combination. And one day I saw that a group of Indigenous people are coming walking, because quite often they walk because they don't have money to take the public transport. That I know what's the reason, because I had my colleagues, Indigenous people who worked with me, and I asked this question, why Indigenous people walk always? Because of them is in Australia, in a place like Australia, imagine Indigenous person walk 15, 20 kilometer in a day to go to hospital, buy the provision. That's a standard thing. So one group was coming from one side, and another group was coming from other side. I was just watching from a balcony. They're coming, and obviously these two groups know each other, and they hugged. They had a lot of talk and discussion, and they sat on the floor. Then they start talking about it. Then I could see that they're sending 2-3 youngsters. They went away, and I could see immediately. And they went to buy booze, alcohol. And likely after 10-15 minutes, they came with a 2 big, carton of alcohol, the beer. And they were sitting on the floor, the ground, and they started drinking beer. And within few minutes, I saw one lady walking with a dog. And she said, "You're not supposed to drink in public." They said, "We are not creating any difficulty for anybody. We are in one side of this park. We are not coming to you, and we are just drinking." And she said, "No, you should move immediately from the park, because you are a nuisance for the society." Because she is only one lady, one dog, the entire park. But she insisted that they should move out. They said, "We are not creating any problem for you." But what she did, she called the police. And imagine, the police detained all of them. They arrested them, they put it in the detention vehicle and took them away. But why they drink in public? They are not allowed to enter in a pub in Australia, in practical sense. I know I had difficulty to walk into a pub, so that's a different story. So when a society is structurally discriminated people, and they're pushed into the so-called breaking the laws. This is similar thing is happening in India also. In Kerala also, I can say that if you go to Attapadi, maternal mortality, infant mortality is still high. But okay, this is a criticism of it. Then what to do with that? See, in Attapadi, most of the professionals are from outside. The maternal mortality workers, doctors, everybody from outside. At the same time, there are community health workers. If each ward you train their own community health workers, ASHA workers from the community. And also, remember, in Indian traditional societies, they have traditional medicines. I'm not saying that the scientific part of the traditional medicine is scientific, not scientific. That's a decision should be taken by the state, not by me. But modern allopathy says that anything other than allopathic medicine is unscientific. But remember that the concept of evidence, when you apply the concept of evidence, informed opinion is also evidence. In allopathic medicine, you have something called expert opinion is evidence. In the traditional medicine, that's an expert opinion of several generations. So maybe you should give it a try. You should have a medical pluralism should be explored in the indigenous population context in India, in Kerala. How do you promote or how do you acknowledge the indigenous knowledge systems of the Adivasis in Kerala? Unless you acknowledge that, and probably looking at the indicators, it may not work on that. And also the so-called indicators, can we look at their own indicators? The social solidarity is not an indicator for any of the social cohesion point of view. They still maintain their social solidarity, even though their language is lost, their opportunity to practice the rituals. For example, Adivasi Theyyams are the one way of a ritualistic tradition there, but that most of this Adivasi Theyyams is extinct. It's no more practice, or they don't know that transition of the traditional knowledge, the worldview transformation, the transforming that to the traditional society, to the next generation. That opportunity is almost lost. So in Adivasi issue in Kerala, in Indian context, number one, we should have a relook at it, how to maintain their cultural knowledge and the knowledge transition, and also coming out with indicators to look at their own indicators and what we call it as emic approach, the indicators of their own society, their own value premises. And also I would say that when you look at Indian philosophy, there's a strong philosophy worldview of indigenous people. The tribal philosophy of India is a least explored area of body of knowledge. Similarly, from the professional social work point of view, professional social workers' intervention with or interaction with or engagement with the traditional societies are a different methodology, different value proposition. This needs to be documented, studied, researched, data need to be collected. I'm sorry it went on a little longer than what I expected, but this is my take on indigenous population in Kerala, in India, and in relation with indigenous population in Australia. Thank you.